So where did this idea of CO2 come from, Church of Two? Let me tell you the story. The Lord moved us into house church in the late 90s. I'd been a pastor here in Denver, several churches, traditional churches, for 25 years. And the late 90s, the Lord moved us into house church. We really had no idea what we're doing, so it was a huge journey of discovery. And two things that were on our mind from the outset was a way of doing church that was both transformational and viral. Transformational in the sense that it really changed lives. We became conformed to the image of Christ. We grew in our relationship with Him and with community. Viral in the sense that it expanded, it could multiply in a kind of a natural, spontaneous sort of a way. So those were two values. And we'd been doing house church for a number of years, and we definitely felt that we were seeing progress in those two areas, transformation and viral. But we had a sense that there was something more. There was a hunger for, it's like there was something more that the Lord wanted to do. And one day my friend Kent Smith heard the Lord say these two things. He heard wider yet and smaller still. Wider yet, we understood the Lord to be saying that He wanted us to learn how to do kind of regional house church networks. That's kind of a whole different topic. But the other phrase was smaller still. What did that mean? Something smaller still than house church. We began to listen to the Lord about that. And one day in June of 2009, I was leading a conference in Albuquerque about house church. And Sunday morning of that weekend, I woke up early, and just in my mind was this whole idea of CO2. It's like God had kind of downloaded this idea to me. I hadn't been trying to figure it out or anything. And so I put my clothes on, went over to Starbucks, and just started writing all the stuff that was in my head about this idea of a CO2. And in simplest terms, it's just two people, two spiritual disciplines, which you're going to be learning about in this next 4 weeks, as close to every day as possible. I went back to the conference that day and shared that with people, a little bit nervous about what would they think of this. It was a totally new idea. And to my great delight, they were thrilled with the whole idea, bought into it, and we began starting CO2s at that point. So over the last number of years, we've continued to experiment with this, teach it to various people, and in fact, we have found it to be both highly transformational and viral, something that's easy to multiply. A couple of things, again, you're going to learn more in these next 4 weeks, but a couple of things that we've been just delighted in. One is it has a huge impact on families. So oftentimes, husband and wife will form a CO2 and will check in with each other on a daily basis. And then it flows over into family life. And so a lot of families begin to do this around the dinner table, checking in with each other and then sharing, listening to the Lord together and sharing what God's been saying. A second benefit has been it tremendously strengthens house churches or small groups of any kind. The problem with house church is they often only meet once a week. So it's great that they do that, but what happens the rest of the week? How do you do Hebrews 3:13, encourage one another daily? The CO2 allows you to do that. And so what we found is the very best house churches, again, we think of a house church as a vibrant family of Jesus. And so the degree of vibrancy increases tremendously if a house church is comprised of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 CO2s that meet during the week. One other element that I would add there is we found it to be tremendously viral. The way to start a new house church, a larger church, is to start with a little CO2, just 2 people doing this. And then as the Lord, or if the Lord leads, you begin to invite other people into that. So starting a house church is not so much about inviting 10 or 15 people to my house on Tuesday nights and trying to get this thing going. It works way better to start small and then to add people as the Lord leads. Really, we think of a CO2 as a sort of an embryonic form of church. So it's like if you ask the idea or ask the question, how would you get 1 million human beings? The answer is you start with 1 million embryos, and they grow and develop from there. So we found that this idea of CO2 is hugely relevant to the idea of a church planting movement. So over these next 4 weeks, my prayer is that you will have a great experience with CO2s in these two areas, discovering them to be transformational on a personal basis, with your family, with your friends, and then that you might get insights about how this idea of churches might multiply and literally spread across your country. So my prayer is that this will be a great experience for you.